So this is Jacked Up Politics, local election edition. I'm here with Councillor Cathal Rasmussen, who is the Labour councillor for Cobh. Cathal has been a councillor for 10 years, Cathal?
Yeah, just over 10 years, Jack. I was co-opted for the first 6 months, but I've served 2 full terms now as well, yeah.
All right. So Cathal been a Labour councillor for Cobh for the last 10 years. Just a bit of a side note is, because of the interest of impartiality in Cobh, I would be friends with both of Cathal's sons, Ben and Adam, who I know from secondary school. So big shout out to them if they're listening. And Cathal, what we'll do is, what we're going to ask you is just how you got involved with the Labour Party. What kind of was your decision to get involved with local politics in Cobh, and how you've been getting on, and then we'll get on to the questions that we've discussed previously. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine, Jack. No problem.
Okay, so Cathal, you've been involved with the Labour Party for a very long time in Cobh. Do you mind telling us how you got involved in the Labour Party, why you chose the Labour Party, and why then you chose to go into the local government in Cobh?
Yeah, Jack, look, I suppose historically, I worked in Irish Steel many years ago when Irish Steel was a big industry in Cobh. I was very involved in the trade union movement, go back all those years ago, and I used to help John Mulville out with issues locally in the trade union movement and stuff like that. So I would have had a big connection with John, and I suppose the whole Labour movement really trying to keep Irish Steel open going back all those years ago. And then what happened was John retired over just about approximately 11 years ago, and I was approached to know would I be interested in running for the Labour Party. I suppose one of the reasons they did ask me to get involved is because I've been a community activist all my life. So I would have been always there helping people. Going back from the time I was 16 years of age, I was involved in Roof Junior Vincent de Paul at the age of 16, and then I went on to Cobh Youth Services, Chilling the Hill, and then involved in many organisations over the years. So I suppose the Labour Party, they were always there to try and help people, the working class. That was always their background, and they were founded on trying to help people as much as they could. So I suppose with that in mind, I was co-opted for a few months in the County Hall to see how I would get on. Would I be able to do the job? Was I interested in doing the job? And yeah, I enjoyed it. And then I decided to run for my first election 10 years ago, and I was lucky to win the seat. And then I ran again 5 years later, and I won the seat a second time. So that's how I got involved, I suppose, initially as such, yeah.
Okay, that's a pretty interesting story. Local activist all your life, which you're pretty much like myself, Cathal, being an activist, because I've been involved with politics since I was a young fella myself. And I don't, sometimes more for the better, more than the worst, but we won't get into that too much.
I hear you.
But yeah, like my granddad, Paddy Hewlin, he would have been a member of the Labour Party in Cobh for a long, long time as well. And my granduncle, Pa Payne, would have been a member of the Labour Party up in Cork City as well. So I suppose we both have the connection to Labour there, that, kind of like, I have a family connection, and you're in the party yourself, and you've been in there for God knows how long now. As some say, you might have been in there too long.
Sure, look, at the end of the day, I suppose my mantra is to help people. I don't get too hung up on the party badges as such, because when you're a county councillor, and I know a lot of people think that you're there and you must do as you're told, but as a county councillor, that's not how things work. Once this election's over and the 6 councillors will get elected, whoever they are, they would all work for the Cobh Municipal District. Yes, they'll have different colours of badges and different political affiliations, but at the end of the day, our job as county councillors is to work for our community. That's the way it works. And if anybody thinks any different, then they shouldn't be running this in these elections, because that's what our job is. Yes, some of us are involved in parties, but at the end of the day, my job is to do the best I can for my community and for the people in my community at all times. That's what I work to. Definitely.
And I suppose that's a very sincere approach, when I had Medi, Ger and Anthony on over the last few days, they were all saying very similar things, that despite what colour badges they might be wearing, they want to represent the people of Cobh. And I think that's a very reassuring thing to see coming into the locals, because I know a lot of people are feeling disenfranchised, they're feeling like let down. There's quite a lot of people out there that are feeling that that all the political parties out there aren't representative of them anymore. And it's very tough, I suppose, on some people to kind of not feel marginalised, and in a time that is very politically polarising. But the fact of the matter is that, like, you have a stellar record here in Cobh. Anytime I've rung you over issues, Cathal, you've been fantastic, and I know quite a few other people that have texted into the podcast have been singing your praises as well. So I think that just goes to show the calibre of councillor you are. That it shows that you are willing to help out people here in Cobh, and I think that hasn't gone unnoticed.
I suppose, Jack, look, I've worked all my life in communities, whatever communities I've been involved in. I was involved in the Springfield Ramblers. I was involved in the tennis club outside. I was chairman of both of those. I'm vice chairman of the community centre. I'm on the board of the museum. I'm the chair of Cobh Youth Services still. And I do it because I like it and I feel I have something to offer. And I suppose, I'm there not to put myself forward, but I'm there to support the groups and the people that use these facilities. And that's what it's all about. And I enjoy doing it. Yes, it can be difficult. It can be challenging, and at times frustrating. But I would like to think that I've done a lot more good than bad over my 40 years or so that I've been involved in communities in Cobh. And I'm looking forward to carrying on that trend going forward, I hope.
And in fairness, like a lot of people will kind of say that you have, I'm one of those people. I know my mum would be one of those people that have said you have done quite a lot for Cobh, because like I remember 2 years ago when I was beginning out as in Cobh, trying to help people out as much as I could. You were always a fantastic councillor to turn to and get stuff done that needed to be done, and as well, I think the fact that you've been re-elected twice, Cathal, I think is testament enough. Now, the first question I was going to ask you tonight was, it's about, we've gotten quite a lot of queries about infrastructure into Cobh, and quite a lot of people are saying to me that they're very disappointed with the lack of roads maintenance coming into Cobh, because they're saying two of the biggest concerns we were getting was Ballard Hill is in an absolutely atrocious state, and another one was that areas on the Photo Road are starting to become bottlenecks as well. Now, for people listening, county councillors can only advise the road maintenance division, isn't it? That any kind of like infrastructure, like road building, has to go through the National Transport Authority. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, Jack, look, just to explain the process, I suppose, first of all, Ballard is a road that is going to be resurfaced between now and August. That's public knowledge, okay? It's the only road in the Cobh area that will be resurfaced. Some of the road was done last year, and the rest of the road will be done this year. I suppose one of the biggest challenges that we have with Ballard Hill is the fact that the cement lorries come in and stuff falls off the back of them. That is still a challenge going forward, and we're looking at a way to try and deal with that with the cement companies, because it's not, the road will be fixed this summer for sure, right? But it would be terrible if a couple of days or a week later the cement trucks come in again and toss stuff up in it. Now, people will say, you should do this, you should do that. The reality is that these trucks are entitled to be on the road, but we in Cork County Council are working with the cement companies and the haulage companies to try and deal with that. But look, the good news is Ballard Hill will be sorted out, not before it's time, but it comes down to finances and resources. And I suppose, before we go on to the R624 and the whole Photo Road, okay, the reality is that in Cork County Council, we get the third lowest, right, money from the government per kilometre to repair the roads. Now, we have the biggest number of roads in the whole country, but we still get the third lowest. Now, we've spent the last 3 or 4 or 5 years in County Hall fighting with the executive, number one, who then in turn with us fight with the department. There was very high level meetings taking place with the ministers in Dublin recently, and we're still waiting to hear whether our funding will be gone up. That's not an excuse, that's actual fact. And the difficulty is that, look, the weather this year has been terrible. The amount of rain that fell again last week, where there was damage done outside Ray Mills' place, there was damage done up on top of the hill, there was damage done down Westview. The problem with this is, and these aren't excuses, these are actual facts, that the roads aren't being repaired fast enough. Part of the reason is down to resources. We don't have the workforce and we don't have the money. In relation to the R624, look, if anybody comes on your podcast and tells you that they're going to do this and they're going to do that, that's not how this system works. No, 5 years ago when we were elected, right, we put it back on the agenda. Not that it was gone off it, but what we did was that we have a roads meeting every 3 months. And what happens is every 3 months, the executives come in, the senior engineers and the roads engineers, and they give an overview of all the roads and all the developments that are going on in the whole county. R624, and better known as the Fota Road, is now on that. Yes, progress is very slow. A feasibility study was done over 18 months ago. That has been with the department, and 150,000 approximately was allocated this year to move it to the next phase. Because again, if anybody comes on your podcast and tells you, I'll get this done, I'll get that done, it is very, very difficult. It is down to resources. And yes, there will be a new Fota Road down the road. How soon? I can't tell you. I'm not going to come on air with you now, Jack, and make promises, because I cannot do that. The only thing I can say to you is that every 3 months going forward, they must give us a report. And the report that was given at the last meeting was that this money was allocated to allow further discussion and further planning on the road. But it's not just the Fota Road itself, it's all the infrastructure in Cobh itself. So our understanding is it will be done in 3 phases. There'll be out at the roundabout by Cathal, there'll be a major job done there. There will be a new bridge, and then there will be a new road in. But it takes time, it takes money, and yes, it is very, very slow. In fairness to John Mulvihill, when he was a TD, John Mulvihill made fierce progress on the Fota Road. People have forgotten it. As you come into Fota Road on the left, all that area was cleared there. Jack, you were probably a young boy at the time, right? That was all done 20 years ago, right? That was done, and as soon as John lost his seat, the progress stopped. So we do need to get it sorted, and it will be sorted in due course. But I can assure you that the councillors in Cobh have been fighting. We have it on the agenda. It is very slow and it is very frustrating, but it is going to take time. But all I can assure you is Cork County Council are leading this project, but it will be the department and the Roads Authority who will be funding it down the road.
Definitely. And I just want to add a note there for the listeners who will be listening to this evening, tomorrow, or during the week. What a lot of people don't realise with the County Council is that the County Council are limited by the Local Government Management Authority as well, and that they are very slow to hand out money for projects like this. Like, we in Cobh are very lucky with the 6 councillors we have, including Councillor Rasmussen. But the fact of the matter is that the LGMA and the Department of Transport and a few other departments are very slow, because there's always going to be political infighting that always slows up these projects. And I think that's something people don't take into account when they're making these local election promises, Cathal. You know, it's kind of like they'll promise you one thing, but they haven't actually done the research behind it, and then they can't fulfill these promises, you know. Whereas what I'm hearing from you is experience of the system, knowing how the system works, where the headaches are in the system, right? Trying to fight a system that's very slow while still trying to give back to the people, you know. And I think that's to be commended, because, like, not a lot of people would come out and say, look, I'm going to promise you this, I'm not going to promise you that. In fairness, Cathal, you are kind of coming out and you're being honest, you know. And I think that kind of integrity in politics nowadays is very rare, you know. And I think that has to be commended as well, you know. So, like, go on, say, Cathal.
What I was going to say, Jack, look, the reality of this is we all know how badly we need the Fota Road to be upgraded, right? But just to explain to the listeners, the Cathal to Middleton new road, or bypass, or call it what we have a name on it, that was shelved last year, right? We had expected that to be developed. So unfortunately, in Dublin, there's, I suppose, a pullback on doing major roads, mainly due to funding. And also because what they're looking for is people to be getting on buses and trains and walkways and cycleways, which is all very important. But a new road will come into Cobh, And I can assure you that we spend numerous hours and hours at every meeting when we talk about the roads in Cork every quarter, about the Photo Road. In actual fact, the last day when we were at our last meeting, I'd say about 3 weeks ago, and there was an accident on the road and the whole road was blocked, and we happened to be in County Hall at the same time, ranting literally about the Photo Road. Unfortunately, that won't make any difference because it won't make the road come any faster. But what I would say to listeners is, when the general election comes up, we as councillors can only do so much. When the general election comes up this year, sometime later in the year, when the candidates come to the door talking to you about what they can do and what they will do, this is the time to get them on the Photo Road. Because we as county councillors have raised it, we have it at a certain level. Unfortunately, it's above our level that we need the support to get it. Remember, we had 3 senior ministers in Cork for the last number of years, and we still don't have any traction on the Photo Road. Any traction on the Photo Road was due to the councillors in the Cobh Municipal fighting with the executive, and they sat up and listened and said, right, this is where we're going to go with it. We'll get the feasibility study done, and we will report back to you every quarter. At the end of the day, the decision makers are in Dublin, not in Cork County Council.
Yeah. And the next piece of infrastructure I want to ask you is more local related. It's about the junction at the bottom of Ballyleary, at the by Two Line, because that's been a big question from a lot of my listeners, or mine and Tom's listeners, I should say. My apologies, Cathal. Is a lot of people are saying they're finding that junction very dangerous, and I know as well that the guards are finding it extremely difficult to police that road as well because of the sheer danger on that road. So I just wanted to ask, has there been any progress made on the junction there at the end of Ballyleary? Like, has the council decided if they're going to do any upgrades with it? Are they going to do any repair work to it? Just, because kind of like, I know...
Yeah, no, good question. It's a fair question. Look, Jack, again, just to explain to people, right? And I know a lot of people have been concerned about it in recent weeks, but just to scroll back and do a history channel on it, a number of years ago, planning was sought for the Clonard development and the Cooline development and other developments up further, okay? And the residents down there, I worked with the residents down there, and I worked very closely with them, and we put in huge submissions, not against the development itself, but against the infrastructure, because we were all aware that with 240 or odd houses coming on stream, plus houses, another 100 and whatever houses up further, you were going to have a huge volume of traffic down there. In the end, the planners, or on board Planala, who was at that stage, they, in their wisdom, made very little changes to the road structure down there. That wasn't what we wanted. We wanted to change the whole road structure down there, but we didn't get that. So yes, the developer has to do certain works on his side of the road, and still the road will be resurfaced and widened in certain sections of it. But the narrow boreen, as we call it, down onto the Tay Road, that isn't scheduled to be changed, as far as I'm aware. Now, I had a motion at our last meeting, or 2 meetings ago in the Cobh Municipal, to see could we have a review of that road and could we look at changing the corner, because as you come down the end of that boreen, a truck or a tractor knocks the pole down, which still hasn't been put up, saying stop or yield. But the difficulty is that as you put the nose of the car or vehicle out there, it is very, very dangerous. The response from the engineers was, Councillor, we would love to do it, but we don't own the land, okay, left and right, and to do a CPO is not as straightforward as that. Now, what I have done is I have another motion back in at our meeting tomorrow on Tuesday week, which is our final meeting, looking for a full review of the whole road from the Kirkwood Villas end all the way to Ballyleary. Because again, I've had discussions with some locals, and some people would put stuff up on Facebook that it should be one way in it, all this kind of stuff. My view really is, Jack, is that as soon as the 6 councillors are elected after this, we as local reps need to meet with the residents down there and the engineers to look to see what can be done. Because you see, the whole road itself needs to be fully resurfaced, just straight off. Unfortunately, the council won't resurface that at this point in time, because why would they when all the construction is going on? So I think we need to look and see what can be done under. Some people would say the one-way system is good. Other people would say it's not. I suppose it depends where you are on the route and how it would affect you. But I suppose the most important thing is that, look, the developer had to pay certain monies to the council. But again, people start saying that he should do this and he should do that. The developer only has to do what he's told by in the planning. And my understanding is that he doesn't have to do anything down there in relation to footpaths or roads until the second phase. Now, he's well advanced on the first phase up there, but then he will do the work in the second phase. We don't make those rules. They're the rules that are there on the planning. But as I say, I put a big submission in that time, not against the houses, but against the whole infrastructure, because it was a disaster. But look, we're very concerned about it. We're very conscious of it. But I would also say, Jack, that speeding is one of the main causes of problems in this town, like all towns at the moment. The Tay Road is no different. We've tried to get speed ramps on the Tay Road and the engineers won't allow it. We've worked, and all of us have worked with all the locals on the Tay Road. We got signs up, we got markings on the road and stuff like that. And I am very hopeful that we may have agreement now to put the speed van on the Tay Road in one area, which will help. Because again, the guards or the people in the speed van can't pull in if there's not a safe area to pull in. So again, it is very frustrating for loads of people, and I understand it. You know, the trucks and the machinery are going up and down the road, tearing up the road, they're going down the wrong road, and you have people living in the area. So I fully understand, and it is very, very frustrating. And I met with the developer last week to get a full understanding of what his obligations are. And I also spoke with the engineer. So look, as I say, I have a motion in, and out of that motion, what I'll be saying is that as soon as the election is over, the 6 councillors in conjunction with the engineers need to come up with a plan to see, should it be made one way? What can we do? What can't we do? And to get a full understanding of what the planning is allowing far down there. Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on all sides as to what is supposed to happen with that road.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, you know, it's like that junction had been dangerous even before this year, you know. Even when I was younger, that was a dangerous junction, you know. So this isn't a new issue for a lot of people. This issue has been, I think it's just been compounded over time. And I think there's a case as well here in Cobh that, like, a lot of the people in Cobh, like, are very proactive in bringing light to these issues. And I think it's the fact as well that it's not the councillors. I don't think it's the councillors' fault when the engineers decide that it's not worth it, you know. So I think that needs to be said to people as well, you know. Cathal is bringing it to the attention of the engineer, but Cathal can't control what the engineer says. And I think that needs to be noted as well. I think we also need to note as well the fact that you can only make representation to the engineer about the issue, but whether the engineer does something about it, Cathal, is a completely different story. You know?
Completely. I'm Jack, again, just to explain to people, because I know at times people get frustrated when we put stuff up on Facebook, particularly about potholes. We report the potholes. They call me the pothole man. That's what the joke is. And I have no problem with that. I go out, I take photographs of the potholes, I measure the potholes, I send a list in regularly to the engineers. But at the end of the day, it's not my job to go around and check the potholes. That's the engineer's job. But unfortunately, they are so busy and they are so short-staffed. Okay, and again, that's not an excuse, that's fact. The problem is that they can't be everywhere, okay, because going back historically, when Cobh had their own town council, we had X number of workers in the area. Now those workers are spread all over Cobh, Cathal, Little Island, Knockgraha, Whitechurch, Longton. So all those people are part of one group, okay? And I suppose, yes, the engineer, and we all do it. Anybody can look at the minutes of the meetings. We're fed up of raising potholes, fed up of raising drains, okay? Harbour View, Harbour Hill, the town, up Laundry Hill. We keep doing it and keep saying it, that they need to be done. But at the end of the day, I don't have a say if they're to be done or not. I can only raise them. And again, if anybody comes on your podcast and tells you they will do this, they will do that, unfortunately, that is not the way it works. Yes, we make representations and we fight with the engineers, and we do fight, all of us. But at the end of the day, they have to say on who allocates the works. We're not, the men don't report to us. I cannot ring up one of the lads on the road and say, would you do this? I must go through the engineer and he details the work. And it is slow at times. And I fully accept that, because I can assure you, I'm far more frustrated than your listeners are when I report potholes and I come back 2 days later and the same pothole is there with another one up further. So I can tell you, I'm far more frustrated, believe you me, because of the time and energy I spend on it.
Oh, definitely. And I think there's definitely Cork County Council. The council is having to do a lot more with a lot less budget. And I think that needs to be stressed as well to people, that Cork County is the largest county in the country.
Yes.
And Cobh is one of the largest LEAs in the county. Because in terms of people living in it anyway, in terms of sheer population, the Cobh LEA has 4 very large zones in terms of habitation. You have Carricktool, which is a major dormitory town or village. You've Cobh, you've Glenpawn, and you've Little Island. So you've four major dormitory towns and villages there. And in fairness, Cathal, you're probably being called about issues in all 4 of those, whereas say 10 years ago you would have only been getting called about issues in Cobh. And I think as well that the next issue, this brings me on to my next issue, is about housing. I know that the new housing development at the bottom of Clonard, I know there's a fair whack of them are up for social housing and affordable housing. And I was just going to ask you about that development and about those houses coming online, because I think that might be of interest to the listeners as well.
Okay, so look, Jack, I suppose in Cobh, we're being very well served by new houses in Cobh at present, and have been for the last number of years. At the moment, as we all know, there's 3 developments ongoing. We have the one down in Clonard, we have the one in Crewline that is still ongoing. There's actually 4 as such, because we have the one up by Keating's, and then we have the one in Damery's Field. So the bulk of 2 or 3 of those are all council houses, in the sense that there will be people off the social housing list will be getting those. The one down in Clonard, which is the one I can speak about because I know it best at the moment, there was approximately just under 50 houses there for affordable houses. That means people who wouldn't normally be able to get a full mortgage because they couldn't afford it, they can go into that scheme. And there were loads of people from Cobh who have availed of that. And the first couple of houses are being given out at present on that scheme. And then there are another approximately 50 houses that will go for social housing. 30 of them are 2 and 1 bedroom houses. We've been very critical in Cork County Council over the years of the department that we would have loads of people that would come to all of us as councillors who are single, or there may be an elderly couple or just a couple, and they wouldn't be eligible because it would be always 3 bedroom houses given out. Now we have a lot of them coming up in Cobh, and the first 6 houses to be allocated or to be advertised were advertised last week. Up in the new estate, up by Keating's there's 28 houses up there, and they're all 2 beds. So in that sense, we are making progress. Is it enough? Of course it's not enough. And it never will be enough as such, because I suppose for every one house that the council get or buy or give out, there's another 5 or 6 people waiting to get more. But all I can say to you is that, it is not easy. Outside of potholes and stuff like that, social housing is the most difficult challenge to deal with as a county councillor. It is desperate. It's very sad when we're talking to mums and sons and daughters, or mothers of fathers with young children who may have to go into emergency accommodation because of the fact that they have nowhere to go, or that they can't afford to buy a house. It is very, very difficult, and I can assure you, we as councillors do get very stressed at times when we're doing our best. And it's like the loaves and fishes. We have only so many houses, and we've only so many people. And again, at the end of the day, we all make representations. And I've been very lucky in my 10 years in County Hall that I've been able to help a lot of people to get social houses in Cobh and the Cobh Municipal District. But it's never enough. And I suppose one big issue, Jack, is, and I know people are very critical of the infrastructure in Cobh, and I quite agree. And I suppose it's a difficult one. If they'd waited for the infrastructure to be improved, all these houses would never be built, and then the situation would be worse. But, I suppose at the end of the day, progress has been made. People would say not enough. And I suppose you could argue all day long whether it is or it isn't. But again, as a councillor, we get regular briefs every 3 months in County Hall at our quarterly meeting on housing, on the number of houses, on the number of voids, and stuff like that. And I think in Cobh, in the next 12 months or less than 12 months, we'll have another 100, if not 150 houses to be given out, which is a lot of houses, Jack, in a short term, really,
And I think that's to be commended as well, and in fairness, I think the fact that many social houses are coming online over the next couple of years, I think that's fantastic news, because I know myself, I know quite a lot of single mothers with young kids that would be delighted to hear that news, and I think it's great in one sense that these houses are coming online, but I also think that the county council can't shoulder the blame for the lack of housing when it's a national issue. I think, a lack of or social housing nationally and affordable housing nationally. I think that's not really the council's fault. That's more that policy failure by the government, or by consecutive governments, I should say. And I think the fact that you are trying to make progress is to be commended. And anyone that knows you knows that you've a stellar record on housing for getting people into these houses. I know myself, when I rang you about someone I knew who needed a social house, you were always making sure that they were well looked after, that they were well accommodated, even if it meant putting them into emergency accommodation, you were always there for them. And I think that needs to be noted as well, Now,
just before you Jack, I suppose the one thing that people should understand as well is that, as county councillors, we don't get involved in complaining about the national issue, because our job really is to deal with the local issue about housing. So the way it works is that we get an allocation of houses, and to be fair to Cork County Council, just to finish on this, Cork County Council don't actually build houses because we don't have the people to build the houses. But what they do is they do buy houses from developers so that they can house people. And with every development that's there, they must hand over so many to the council. But on top of that, we are buying a lot of houses in Cobh, and it is very important that we continue to do that. But also it's important that we have the right mix of houses as well. We don't want all social houses in one area, because you have to get the balance right, because it's very important as well. Okay.
Oh, it is without a shadow of a doubt. Now, the next issue it brings me on to is community policing. I know you're the chair of the community policing committee in Cork County Hall.
Yeah.
And what I just wanted to ask you was, in Cobh over the last few months, we have seen quite a number of antisocial behaviour incidents. We've unfortunately seen a tragic fatality, and we've also seen two fatalities, and I don't want to delve too much into those, because they're both very, very sad. But I know myself, I have a few buddies in Garda Síochána. They're being forced to do more with less. I know Cobh Garda Station, the lads down there are absolutely fantastic. They're a great bunch of guys and girls, work extremely hard for the local community. But the reason I'm bringing up policing is that I've gotten a few questions about what's being done about the antisocial behaviour in Cobh, and what is the guards' outlook on Cobh at the moment, because quite a few people raised concerns about safety following the antisocial behaviour incidents.
Yeah, Jack, and look, I suppose Cobh is no different to any other town or village in the whole country. I get frustrated and I get mad, really, when incidents are reported on radio stations, and sometimes it paints Cobh as being, a no-go area, and that's not actually correct. Yes, we do have our problems. Yes, we have our antisocial behaviour, but so does every other town in Ireland. I suppose there's a number of issues. One, I've been the chair of the county police board for the last number of years, and basically that's not important. But what it is that we meet with superintendents every couple of months. There's people from different organisations there, there's councils there, and they give us an overview on the crime statistics for the period for the quarter on a regular basis. But I suppose one of the big issues that faces on Garda Síochána is the lack of resources. And I know I've mentioned about the roads and the lack of resources, but again, this isn't an excuse. the reality is that we are very, very short-handed with the Gardaí, not only in Cobh, but all over the country. Unfortunately, going back a number of years ago, we all know what happened, and contracts were changed, we lost guards, and guards are retiring. And as a result, they can't get guards in fast enough. Equally, the job of a guard has become very, very difficult and very dangerous in recent years. There's a lot of issues going on now with gun violence, with attacks, assaults on guards and stuff like that. So whereas before, in the old days, where a relation of mine was a guard, my grandfather was a guard up in Abbeyleix many years ago, and I always remember my mother, God rest her, saying that, and in those days they had bicycles, Jack, right, not cars, so that'll tell you now, right? So, but I always remember my mother, God rest her, saying that when he was go out at night time, they used to all stay awake and they'd hear the gate closing at night time, because they used to always be afraid of what happened. So, the job of the guard has got more difficult. So what are they going to do about it? Well, to be fair, we've had meetings with the inspector. There's a new inspector in Cobh now, and he's very proactive. We've had meetings with the sergeant down below. We've had meetings with the superintendent of the area, right? And I suppose the reality is that they're fully conscious that they are short guards, and as soon as guards become available, they will get guards more into Cobh. That again, that doesn't help us in the short term. And yes, we have had issues where gangs of young people have gone around to different estates. Now that has calmed down, mainly because the guards have waded in and they got a lot of young fellas to come into the barracks with their parents, and they spoke with them. The guards have visited the schools over the time. And I suppose at the end of the day, it is important that people understand you must contact the barracks. If something goes on in your neighbourhood, don't just say, sure, there's no point ringing because the guards won't answer. They must answer. And if you don't answer the first time, you have to keep ringing them and that you have to report it. So I would hope that this combination of that will help things. Equally, parents must take certain amount of responsibility, Jack, as well. It's very easy for people to give out about the guards and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if we only have 4 guards in Cobh at one time, and they have to go off to Cobh, to Carrigtwohill or wherever, or if they're dealing with an accident somewhere or whatever, parents must have some say in what their children are doing. And at times parents say, no, my little boy would never do that. But unfortunately, somebody's little boy is causing trouble. And I do think that, it's a learning, it's educating the children in school, educating the parents, and then with more resources as well. And that will come. Look, it's a bit like the Army, the Navy, all these services are under supported, unfortunately. And the government or the department, the people are trying to get numbers up. We've spent many hours in County Hall debating the number of guards, the number of army, the number of naval personnel. But unfortunately, as councillors, we don't have a say in it. All I can say is that I keep in very close contact with the local inspector. If I ring him any day or night, he will always answer, because he knows if I'm ringing, there's an issue. Sometimes he's off duty, but he'll always take the call in case it's an emergency. And I suppose people need to have confidence in the guards. Yes, they're not always right. They make mistakes like they do, and they cause issues for themselves at times. That's human nature. They're enemies. But I think at the end of the day, we must give them the support within reason and work together with them. And I would like to think that, if the resources improve and increase, life will get better for everybody. But it takes time.
Definitely, Cathal. Now, I have 3 more questions to ask you, and I'm going to kind of push on now, if you don't mind, Cathal. So the next one was about are there any upcoming business supports for businesses in town over the next 5 years? And that was a question that was asked as well. So I said I'd ask you about that.
Yeah, look, I suppose, are there any supports? Very difficult at the moment to get supports in for the businesses in Cobh. The rates are set by the county in County Hall, okay? And I know that, the businesses are always complaining about the rates. Unfortunately, the rates are set, and it's the same rate for all the businesses in the county now. It was kind of equalised a number of years ago. And yes, I have friends in businesses, and they have, they're always saying they are too high. But again, I don't have the exact figure, but I know that for a lot of the smaller businesses, the rates are very low relative to the higher businesses. Yes, obviously their income is a lot lower, as such. But it's not, it's very difficult. We've tried different things. We've tried rebates and stuff like that. But again, it comes down to that if we decided to reduce the rate bill for the whole county by a few million euro in total, we have to find the money somewhere else to maintain the services. And again, it is difficult. You know, a lot of the councils over the last 5 years were actually business people themselves working in County Hall, and they would have argued, but at the end of the day, it is quite difficult. I suppose in Cobh, the most important thing for people in Cobh, Jack, is to shop in Cobh. That's what people have to learn. And, you know, parking is a huge issue in Cobh for many reasons. And, you know, I know we had a big discussion about trying to get a multi-storey car park in Cobh. We had 1 or 2 areas identified. But again, the big problem is the cost. Cork County Council wouldn't pay for it. They told us that. And then when we brought a private company in to have a look at one of the areas, it wasn't feasible for them to do it because it wasn't big enough. You know, now I came up with an initiative a few years ago, because we are a tourist town at the end of the day now, whether people like it or not. Tourism is our main bread and butter business in Cobh. And I came up with the idea that we would use the school car parks during the summertime to help with the tourists. Now, unfortunately, COVID came in the meantime, and that threw a kibosh on that. But we are talking at the moment with some of the local schools, and I understand if things go right, one of the local schools at least will be used this summer in July and August for an overflow for tourists. And I suppose we want to try this to see how it works, and if it works out, then we'll expand it to the rest of the school area. But it is very important that parking is maintained downtown. That, you know, I don't think people quite understand the seriousness of a downtown. We have a lot of people who live down in the town centre who are entitled to park downtown. They get permits, right? Because they're entitled to it, because under the law, the rules. And one of the things that I helped initiate was a 30-minute zone downtown. My idea behind the 30-minute zone was that if you were running into the supermarket downtown, or you run in to get your paper, or to the chemist, you could run in, get your paper or your medicines, and then you were going home again, and somebody else could go in there. Unfortunately, we're stuck for space downtown. That is it. If anybody can come up with a better idea of how to move cars out of there, we have looked at the idea of making zones that you wouldn't be allowed parked there from 8 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. But they're all things that the new councillors would have to deal with when they come in, and again, it's not as simple as saying we're just going to do it, because unfortunately, or fortunately, depending which way you look at it, people living downtown have rights and entitlements. You cannot tell somebody you can't park down there if they own their premises downtown and they have rights to it. So, you know, and I think really and truly, people need to support local. Very, very important. But I do understand that parking is a huge problem of that. That's why we're trying to get the tourists to use the 5-foot way. Hopefully they'll be able to use the school and stuff like that. Excuse me. Because it is very important that we have parking downtown for our own townspeople as well, to maintain the shops and businesses down below.
Yeah, and that's a very good point to make, Cathal. So I'm just going to move on to the final 2 points there. So, this was another thing that was brought to my attention. Was in Cobh we currently have I think is it 5 or 6 GPs. And over the next 3 to 4 years, about a good chunk of them are going to be reaching retirement age. Also, we have an ever-growing population here in Cobh. We have an ever-aging population here in Cobh. And a question that is getting asked frequently is there going to be more done to get more GPs into Cobh? And is there going to be progress made on fully opening up the primary care centre to possibly include a minor injury unit or medical assessment unit?
Yeah, look, and again, very fair questions. I suppose, look, I look back many years ago when I was young, and doctors would call to your house in the middle of the night. The life of a doctor has changed completely. Our population has got bigger, but also as a result of that, we haven't been able to keep up with the demand for doctors. And again, it goes down to resources. And I know it's easy to blame it, but that is the reality of it. And yes, some of our doctors will retire in the next few years, and hopefully will be replaced. Again, the HSE and the doctors are very, very aware of the situation. They fully know that they need more doctors in Cobh to help out. Again, That's not something that I as a counsellor can do. And again, if anybody comes on the podcast and tells you they'll do this and do that, that's not how it works. I don't have a say on GPs in Cobh or the medical system in Cobh. I fully support the new primary care centre down below in Ticknock. It's been a great advantage. People can park down there now as well, and everything's under one roof. My understanding is, yes, it will expand out to different facilities over the next 12 months. I haven't heard that it's going to be an emergency centre, and I don't think that's going to happen there, Jack, but there will be other stuff down there. There'll be occupational therapies and there'll be dentists and stuff like that in there, to the best of my knowledge, but it won't be a fully emergency centre at this point in time. Now, I'm open to correction on that. But look, I suppose the most important thing really is that, we're all aware of the situation, and I suppose the difficulty is doctors are short supply in Ireland. That is a fact. We all know it. But again, we do raise it with the HSE. We raise it on a regular basis. And what we're being told is there's a shortage of doctors. A lot of our younger doctors, when they qualify, they go off abroad and they prefer it. Mainly because, I suppose, they get experience and then come home. But look, at the end of the day, all I can say is a local county council, we keep raising it. I will keep raising it. But I'm not going to say that it's going to get better anytime soon, because I do fully understand that people have waiting times and they're struggling to get into GPs as well. I suppose COVID and all the illnesses that came with COVID over the last number of years haven't helped that either, to be honest with you, because a lot of people have been a lot sicker as a result of COVID.
And the final question I have for you is regarding schools. Now, I was talking to a local school teacher yesterday about the nature of how the pressure about schools in Cobh, and they said something interesting to me. They said there is enough capacity for students here in the secondary schools and in the primary schools in Cobh, and the two, from what they told me as well, was that there has been a lot of progress made on extensions for these schools, and that the question he has is that when will we see these extensions for the two secondary schools possibly be started, or when will we see the schools getting the funding to start these projects?
Yeah, and again, look, Jack, that's a great question. I suppose, look, we have loads of young people that go outside the Cobh to go to school. Some of them by choice, okay, which always saddens me, but that is a fact. Others, because they have no choice, because they can't get a place in Cobh, and they go to loads of areas. I see them on the ferry in the mornings, there in the evenings going down, and some days there's dozens and dozens of children. In relation to the schools, my understanding was a couple of years ago, funding had been made available for the community college. I don't have the exact date or position on it, but I did ask somebody the other day that I'm a bit surprised that they haven't gone for tender, or that they're not starting. I gather that maybe they went back to actually make it even bigger than the original plan was, such. But I don't know. But Jack, that has been approved as far as I'm aware. Again, in relation to Closhmere have applied for an extension. Okay, whereas, and I'm not quite sure where that is, but they did apply for an extension up there, right? I suppose these things work slowly. Again, while my understanding is that the numbers have dropped a little bit for the next number of years of children coming through from the national school into secondary schools. So while there was huge pressure a few years ago, they do the calculations over a 5 or 10 year period based on the children who are born, obviously. And while there are under fierce pressure, I don't hear the same amount of pressure now as there has been. But it is very disappointing that if you want to have your child or children going to school in Cobh and you can't get a school place, that is very disappointing. But again, it's something that we have to. I'm not on the board of the ETB, so I don't know exactly what's happening about the community college, but I do know that plans are very far advanced to do the work there, but I'm not quite sure what the delay is at this stage. No.
Perfect. Yeah, that's pretty much all the questions the listeners had for you in terms of housing, policing, business, healthcare, and schools. And one question I had myself was, and this will be our final question for the interview, folks, is where does Cathal see himself in 5 years' time? Do you see yourself gearing up to run for another 5-year term, or do you see yourself starting to get ready to step back? Because I know some people might be saying, geez, he must be a glutton for punishment, if he be thinking of going for another 5 years in 5 years' time after all the stuff he was put through over the last 5 years, And I think that takes, I think that deserves a massive pat on the back, willing to put yourselves out there in a very polarizing time politically, because I know 5 years ago we didn't have half the mess that we do today. But I want to ask you as well, has local politics in the last 5 years changed for you as well as where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Yeah, Jack, look, I suppose I've really enjoyed my last 10 years as being a county councillor for the Cobh municipality and the people of Cobh. I suppose, look, I feel my reputation stands for itself. I'm a very hard-working, committed guide to the community. I've been a community activist, as I say, since I've been for the last 40 years, since I was 16 years of age. I always do my best to try and help everybody. And, sometimes it doesn't always work. I suppose my mantra has always been, if you're entitled to get something, I'll make sure you get it. If you're not entitled to get it, I won't be able to help you. And I'm as black and white as that. And I know some people don't like to hear that. And I don't always get it right, okay? Sometimes you think you're doing the right thing, other times you are doing the right thing. But I suppose, where do I see myself in 5 years? I hope I get elected. I think I'm the best person for the job. I have huge experience, and I would like to think I am one of the best people for the job. I hope the people of Cobh and the Cobh Municipal do vote me in for another 5 years. I still have an awful lot to offer. I have years of experience and huge enthusiasm for the job because I like helping people. I've been knocking on the doors for the last 2 months and longer with my campaign team. And you know what? I love knocking on the doors, Jack. And people have been very nice and very pleasant at the door. Of course, you'll have people question you. But that's what we're there for. I'm not one of those people, and I know a lot of people have been saying that, some campaigns are just knocking on the door, or not even knocking on the door, just throwing leaflets in the door and running off. I don't aspire to that. As a county council, we're there to try and help people. We don't always get it right, and we don't always have the answers either. Where would I be in 5 years, Jack? I would like to think that I would have worked hard for the next 5 years. A number of people have said to me, would you run for the general election? I suppose my mantra is I want to get elected on the 7th of June, and let's see where it goes from there. And I will work for the next 5 years, and I wouldn't make any commitment as to where I'd be in the next 5 years because, Jack, life is too short. When one door opens, another door closes, and life can be so funny. As such, the final thing I'd say is in relation to have things changed since I've been a councillor. Oh yes, things have changed. Social media, while it's very advantageous, is very difficult to deal with. As councillors, we get harassed and hassled by people on Facebook. And yes, people are entitled to put up their comments, but sometimes people put up anonymous messages on Facebook and they get very personal. And, I suppose one thing I'm known for, Jack, is I put up the information. If there's a pothole or if there's a road that has to be closed, I will give the information. That's not Cathal Rasmussen deciding to close the road. That's Cathal Rasmussen giving the information to the people to say, look, the road is going to be closed. You need to make alternative arrangements while the road is closed because there's a reason for it to happen. And people do abuse us. And, it is very hard for my family and other family members of all the councillors to hear some of the stuff that goes on Facebook. And sometimes people get very, very personal about things. And it's not nice, Jack, really. And if it's the one thing that has soured me over the 10 years, it's the way people do treat people on Facebook and social media in general. I'm not on Twitter. I only do Facebook as such. But I do hear, and I hear all the councillors, we've had loads of discussions in County Hall about the abuse councillors put up with. And, this is a job at the end of the day, it's a very difficult job. And I have great admiration for any of the 12 people who've put their names on the ballot sheet, because at the end of the day, it's a difficult place to be, putting your name out there and asking people to support you. But I enjoyed the job, and I hopefully will enjoy it going forward for the next 5 years. And I hope that people will come out and vote for me, because I think I have done a lot over the years and I have a lot more to do, Jack.
Well, that's very good to hear. And I know folks, Cathal would appreciate your number one preference or the next highest preference that you would like to give him. This is a bit of a postscript question. Is with the current kind of political situation out there, what would your advice be, say, for someone my age or younger that wants to get involved in politics but is a bit scared to get involved because they're worried that they'll get abused by people in the streets or online? What's your kind of advice for getting involved in politics and kind of dealing with kind of people that?
Jack, that's a very honest question, because, in County Hall over the last 10 years, I've seen some very, very good young people join as councillors, and within 12 months they leave. It's the workload at times, because it is quite challenging to get into the whole system, and took me a number of years to get my feet on the table to fully understand how the whole system works. Because, when we're in County Hall, we report to the executive, we deal with it. We don't have to final decision on an awful lot of things, even though people think we have. And, the most important thing I would say to anybody who wants to get involved is speak to people like myself. I would love somebody to come under my wing, and I would help them and encourage them. Yes, you have to be brave as well. In my experience, very, very few people in my whole life have ever abused me. Yes, I've been the chairman of many clubs in this town. Sometimes I've made wrong decisions with our committee, because that's what committees do, okay? And people don't like the decisions we make, but we always try and make the decision with the whole club or association at heart, right? But what I would say is that I would ask anybody who would like to get involved. I'd be thrilled to help anybody. If I'm re-elected, I would help anybody to understand how the whole system works, number one, to encourage them, number two, to don't be afraid to go and, put your hand up there and ask questions, go and knock on doors and try and begin somewhere. Listen, it's not easy. And particularly, if you're part of a party, it's fine because you'll have seasoned people there. But remember, when I was elected 10 years ago, I was the only Labour councillor in the whole county for that 5 years. So I had to sit with people from all other parties, right, in County Hall at meetings. I was one of 55. So I know better than anybody else what it's like to be on your own. But all I would say is that, and okay, I was older, I had a lot of experience, but I would encourage young people to get involved. But I hope that people do take consideration of young people and older people being involved in politics, and have respect for them and their views and how they go about their business. Because that is the one thing that would put people off, is the abuse and the blackguarding and, the calling out on social media. People would say, but why would I bother? Why do you bother? I suppose I've a thick neck, Jack, at this stage over my lifetime, and I'm able to handle most things. I'm a shop steward at work still, so I understand how to deal with people. But it is difficult at times. But I would hate to think that young people don't get involved, because our young people are our future, Jack. That's the most important message I'd like to say here finally. Young people, right? Young people are our future in this country. And we need our young people to step forward and learn from older people like me, and maybe help me to change some of my thinkings as well, or to educate me. But they do need to come forward, I would suggest, and be part of a political group, independent, whatever it is. At the end of the day, there's room for everybody. Yeah. Once people have respect for each other. So I would hope that people would come forward, and I would be delighted to help anybody that I could, to point them in the right direction and give them some support if they needed it.
Well, folks, that's been the interview with Cathal Rasmussen, Labour councillor for Cobh LEA. Cathal would just to reiterate, Cathal would appreciate your number one preference in the upcoming local election, or your next highest preference. So that ends this episode of Jacked Up Politics Local Elections Special with Cathal Rasmussen. Our next episode is going to be with Dominic Finn. He is the Cobh local election candidate for Fianna Fáil, and we look forward to having Dominic on tomorrow and chatting with Dominic. So until tomorrow, this is Jack signing off for Jacked Up Politics. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.